So B'shus Rabbi Lesser, the rabbi of this wonderful medical center, and B'shus my dear friend Rabbi Fuld, who was always very outspoken, as he was today, and he is a true friend and with amazing achievements, not only a rabbi and a moil, but as the founder of the PGD Laboratory. It is our pride in Shaarei Tzedek and many other endeavors, most recently the Beis Medrash Gavoya, and together with the Technion in Haifa, and I have very high hopes for this institution as well. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give both of you arichas yomim v'shonim, and we should be zeicha l'kadosh Shem Shomayim. I'm happy to be here again, on happier circumstances than last time I was in Maimonides. To the best of my recollection, last time I was in Maimonides Hospital was 60 years ago, when I fell out of a second floor window in Borough Park and I was rushed to the hospital, Motzei Shabbos, and to the best of my recollection, I was here for a few days. I banged my head, and my mother thinks it did me good. So, I'm happy to be back again. And we have come to discuss some of the greater halachic issues, and I think this is the call of our time, and one of the great challenges we have in this modern age. The cooperation between poskim, halachic rulers, and doctors. And this challenge is not unique to medicine. It is in technology, in sciences, and in almost every endeavor in the modern world. But it is most important in medicine, because we are dealing with life and death issues. And nothing in halacha in Judaism is more important and more central than pikuach nefesh, which overrides any other consideration. And therefore, yes, I deal not only with halacha and medicine, I deal a great deal with halacha and technology, different sciences, and many different fields, not only Hilchos Shabbos, but nothing is more important, and I spend a considerable amount of my time, as Rabbi Fuld said, dealing with questions from the medical field, from medical professionals, from Shaarei Tzedek, and not only from Shaarei Tzedek, from the world over. So I understand this conference will deal with two different topics. First one is the vaccination controversy, and then we will further be discussing end-of-life issues. Topic number one, vaccinations. I will try to be as clear and powerful as possible, and being respectful as well. So some great Rosh Yeshivas publicly came out against vaccinations, and I think that is a grave mistake. So starting from the basic fundamentals, the Rambam, Perek Yud Aleph of Hilchos Rotzach v'Shmiras HaNefesh, the Rambam quotes two different sources regarding our responsibility to avoid and prevent jeopardy to human life. One is the Posek Yishom Alocho Ushmoyer Nafshecho Ma'od, and that is based on the Gemara in Brochos Daf Lamed Beis. The Gemara tells a story about a chassid that was davening. He was standing in prayer, and a noble or a minister said, "Good morning," and the chassid did not respond. And that noble patiently waited till he finished praying. And then he asked him, "If I would cut off your head with my sword, nobody would demand your blood. So how did you dare not to respond when I greeted you? You put your life in jeopardy, and that is against your own Torah, which says, Hisham Alecho Ushmoy Nefshecho Ma'od." And the chassid responds with a parable, with a moshel. And he asks him, so typical to a Jewish dialogue, counter question. And he asks him, if you would be standing in the presence of your king, and another person would turn to you and say good morning, would you respond? And he says, of course not. That is disrespectful to the king. So the Chosed says, I was conversing with Melech Malchei Amlochim, with the King of all kings, with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. How could I respond to a mortal? And the noble was inspired, and he let him go. So the Rambam quotes this same pasuk. Hisham Alachoshmo and Afshachim Yored is the source to avoid danger. But the other source is mitzvahs makah, and that is a mitzvah say, a positive precept, one of the Taryag. If you use a roof, you need to fence that roof and build a wall or a fence to prevent anybody falling off the roof. So why do we need two sources? Source number one is Sheva Al Taisa. You need to avoid danger. You're not allowed to go into a house that might implode. You're not allowed to go under a wall that's leaning lest it fall. So is a person allowed to stand on the wrong side of the Tower of Pisa? Probably yes. If it didn't fall in the past 400 years, we could assume it wouldn't fall in the next 5 minutes. So, source number one, demands not getting into trouble. From mitzvahs makah we learn that we need to be proactive, and we need to initiate to prevent danger. Not only avoid, but also to be proactive and to prevent danger. And those are two basic concepts that we learn from the Rambam in the 11th chapter of Hilchos Roitzech and Shmiras HaNefesh. In my tshuvas, in my response, I got a very fundamental halacha. Yes, one is entitled to put himself into remote danger, even for quality of life. But that is if the danger would be defined as being remote. So our kids ride bicycles, you'd be better off walking. People ride motorcycles, statistically, you're putting your life in greater jeopardy there on a motorcycle than in a car. People jump from planes, paraglide. And would someone say that is prohibited by halacha? I don't think so. Well, it's safer to sit in your office than jump out of a plane with a parachute. But the danger is so remote that that is permissible. But when the danger is tangible, it's imminent, and it is a greater danger, then that is strictly prohibited. There's a major discussion between poskim. Is a person required to put himself, his own self, in a lesser degree of danger to save another person from greater danger to his life? And Siman Tav Chav Vav. Very last Siman, Tur Choshe Mishpat. One before the last Siman in Shulchan Aruch. There is only one Siman in the entirety of Dalet Chalkes Shulchan Aruch, 4 parts of Shulchan Aruch, which the Shulchan Aruch goes beyond the Tur. Very few people know about that. And that is the end of Choshe Mishpat. The Tur only has Tav Chav of 426 Simonim. And the Beis Yosef added on another one, Tav Chav Zayin. Because the Tur combines in one chapter the precept, the obligation to save other people from danger, and the prohibition putting your own life in jeopardy. And the Beis Yosef decided to split those halachas into 2 different chapters. Tav Chav Vav is the requirement to save other people. Tav Chav Zayin is a prohibition to put your life in jeopardy. It is only one other place in the entirety of Dalet Chalkes Shulchan Aruch in which the Beis Yosef adds on a siman beyond the Tur. And that is Yeridei Siman Reish Tzadik Zayin. But the Beis Yosef had a problem. if he's going to add on another simon, a Yoredei Reish Tzadik Zayin, he will have to push off all the simonim from Reish Tzadik Zayin to Tov Gimel, which is 105 simonim in Shulchan Aruch that will not coincide with the tool. He didn't want to do that. At the end of Choshen Mishpat, it's just an addition, but it wouldn't render the numbers irrelevant. So what did the Beis Yosef do in Yoredei Reish Tzadik Zayin? It is the only simon in the entirety of Shulchan Aruch in which we have Reish Tzadik Zayin Aleph and Reish Tzadik Zayin Beis, dealing with Kilei Zoroim and Kilei Beheim. The tool put them in one simon, and the Beis Yosef found too much material, so he split them into two. So at the very end of Choshen Mishpat, the tool, the Beis Yosef quotes, Goes Maimonides, based on a Yerushalmi, without writing which Yerushalmi and where is that Yerushalmi that a person is required to put his life in jeopardy to save another party, another person from greater danger. But that halach is not brought in Shulchan Aruch, and the Sma comments, obviously, it is not accepted halach. Where is the Yerushalmi? Masechet Trumis, Mem Zayin, Amud Aleph. So the Yerushalmi tells a story. Rav Amy was taken into custody in the depth of a forest by bandits, by robbers. Obviously, more brutal and dangerous than Robin Hood and his friends in the English forests. Rav Yonason hears that Rav Amy is in the forest, and he says, what a pity. We might as well prepare tachrichim. Resh Lakish, who was a Baal Tshuva, obviously a martial arts artist before he did Tshuva. Resh Lakish, as we find in various different sources, and Bavli and Yerushalmi, was a real fighter, and he says, I am going into the forest. Either I'll kill or I'll get killed. But I will try to bring Rav Amy home. And the Yerushalmi tells the story that Shlokish goes into the forest, he meets those people and engages with them, negotiates, and without firing a shot, without lifting his fist, brings Rav Amy home. So the Goes Maimonides proves from this Yerushalmi, Shlokish obviously put his life in jeopardy. He didn't know those people. He is one. They are probably many, so he did put his life in danger. But he reckoned that his life is in a lesser danger than of Amy, who is totally defenseless. So this is the source from which some Rishonim prove, yes, you are required to put your life in jeopardy if someone else's life is in greater danger. But that is not halachic ruling. However, there are two very significant shuvas in Radbaz, Chelek Gimel, Tov Reish Chav Zayin, and Chelek Hey, Elef Tov Kuf Pei Beis. I'm quoting the sources not because I expect you to remember all the sources I'm quoting, but it's for the record, and also some people might be taking notes. And the Radbaz deals with two different sources. To what extent, to what degree is a person expected to jeopardize his life to save others? And the Radbaz doesn't deal with numbers. Many times I explain to my Talmidim, we do not find in the Rishonim and the Poskim, even the later Poskim, that deal with numbers, because as long as we didn't have statistical sciences and we didn't have the means to accumulate big numbers, we could not speak about percentage points. So Chazal and the early Poskim only deal with general concepts. And the Radbaz says, when the danger is extremely remote, it would be a chiyuv, an obligation. Yes, put yourself in remote danger to save others from great and immediate danger. But if the danger is substantial, you're not mechuyev to do so. It might be considered a midas chasidus. If the danger is very substantial, it would be a prohibition. Your life is not yours to play around with. Those are the three guidelines that we find in Shuvas Eretbas. And many modern rulings are based on those principles. So is a person required to donate a kidney to save others who have kidney failure? I don't think it would be an obligation, but I definitely think it's a midas chasidus. I think this is something to be encouraged, and I have the greatest admiration to those people who donate kidneys to save the lives of others, not only family members, but people they don't even know. And I think this is the greatest mesiras nefesh of our day and age. I think no pressure should be put on people, not even family members. We're not allowed to pressure people to donate any organ, to donate a kidney. But I think these people should be admired for giving away part of their own life and part of their body to save others. Would it be an obligation? No. Would it be permissible? Definitely yes. And according to the guidelines of the Radbaz, I think it would be defined as a midat chasidut. Regarding vaccination, the danger to those kids and people, primarily kids that are vaccinated in the triple vaccination, measles, mumps, and rubella, is extremely remote if it is at all existent. Yes, vaccinations many times cause some mild inconvenience. We are not aware of babies that died as a result of vaccination. But when we don't vaccinate children, well, if one kid isn't vaccinated, he's not putting the greater community in danger, because the bacteria isn't around. But if one kid isn't vaccinated, and then another, and then some more, we can never know where the tipping point is. And we don't know at what point an epidemic might break out. So the very first person that discovered vaccination was Edward Jenner, an English physician, in 1785. And the Tiferes Yisrael, one of the Gedolim of that era, in his commentary on Masechet Avos, Perek Gimel, on the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says, Chavav Adam Shenivro B'Tzelem, Chavivin Yisrael Shenikru Bonim L'Mokoim. And most of the classic commentators, including the Tosis Yamtiv and the Medrash Shmuel, comment that the Reish of the Mishnah, the first statement, refers to every human being. And that is why the Mishnah says, Chovav Odom Shenivra B'Tzelem. Every human being was created, B'Tzelem Elokim, in the image of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And they all are to be cherished. Human life is to be cherished. What is unique about us, about our people, we are defined as a Kodesh Baruch Hu's children. Yes, we are unique. We stand apart. We are the chosen people. But every human being is a Tzelem Elokim. And they are all precious to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they should be precious to us as well. And the Tiferes Yisrael says, some Gentiles definitely would be defined as Chasidei Yom Ha'olam, and they are Mezumen L'Chayei Olam Habo, and they will share with us in the world to come. And he has a list of 4 people. Number 1 on his list is HaChosid Yeiner, who invented or discovered the smallpox vaccination. He writes that word in German. I would never have a chance to quoting that word in German. It has about 35 letters. I can't make it through. But Edward Jenner discovered the smallpox vaccination. And smallpox was a terrible disease. It would only be, we don't need any more than to quote the Mogen Avraham Sementov Ayavov, quoting the Shlo. The Shlo writes, and he is quoted by the Mogen Avraham, that when there is an outbreak of smallpox, people are halachically obligated to leave the cities and go out to the countryside to save their children from being contagious and affected with this smallpox disease. One generation later, We find in various sources, Ziv Chet Tzedek, and Rab Chaim Parachi and his Kaf HaChaim in Yoredeim and Kuftet Zayin, 116 in Yoredeim. They comment that now we have the smallpox vaccination. And Masam B'chol Yom, we vaccinate our children, though there is no longer any need to leave the city. We should vaccinate our children. And in Tov Kuf Mem Hey, that is approximately 1798 or 1799, we find a kuntras called Alei Trufa, written by a rabbi, obviously a Talmud Chochem, who was in London and then in Hague, Holland. His name was Rabbi Avram Hamburg, also called Rabbi Avram Nanzig. And he writes, a Kintus discussing, is it a chiyuv to vaccinate our children for smallpox? Is it the right thing to do? And in the introduction to his Sefer, he writes about his own personal tragedy, losing 2 children to smallpox, and that is what motivated him to write that Sefer. And he strongly argues, yes, we should vaccinate our children, even if some of them will die as a result of vaccination. So, I don't know about the history, but obviously the vaccinations then weren't as refined as they are today. And according to Alei Trufa, even though he argues pro-vaccination, he writes, well, maybe 1 out of 1,000 will die, but it's a price we need to pay, because if we don't vaccinate our children, matters will be far worse and we will be losing many more children. So I saw tshuvas of present-day Gedolim, most of them pro-vaccination. And they deal with the question, so how do we define pikuach nefesh? Is it 1 out of 10, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 500? I don't think that is the relevant question. Because when we deal with coincidence, yes, that is the way to define pikuach nefesh. How great are the risks? How high are the stakes? As I mentioned before, if the sakona is extremely remote, well, we get into remote sakonas every day. In our day-to-day routine and activities, as I said. So children hover around on hoverboards and on rollers and on bicycles, and one cannot say these are prohibited. They do carry some degree of risk, but the risk is very remote. But when we're dealing with basic phenomena, I think we cannot take any risk. So there's a Maggid Mishnah, second Perek Hilchos Shabbos. The Maggid Mishnah explains, your lettuce in women in the course of childbirth and in the immediate aftermath of giving birth to a baby is defined as a chodesh yesh b'sakona. And we violate Shabbos to care for her needs. But the Mishnah in Shabbos Kuf Chof Ches says we need to make a shinui. But the Rambam does not require shinui by any other chodesh yesh b'sakona. So why would your lettuce be different? Why would she be an exception? And the Maggid Mishnah makes an interesting comment, a very fundamental one. And he says, your lettuce isn't sick. It's not an illness. It isn't coincidental. It is part of healthy human nature. Isho achas me'elef eino mesa, 1 out of 1,000 doesn't die, and that is why lechatchila we need a shinui. So this is an amazing number. It is also dumbfounding, and to me it's a big surprise that the Maggid Mishnah writes 800 years ago that 1 out of 1,000 women doesn't die as a result of childbirth. That's very surprising. I think going about 800 years, the numbers were probably higher than that. But what's important is the concept. So 1 out of 1,000 doesn't die, and it's still defined as a chodesh yesh b'sakona? Yes, because this is routine. So let us try to imagine I'm proud to be the posek for Shaare Tzedek Hospital. And to the best of my knowledge, more babies are delivered in Shaare Tzedek than in any other medical institution in the world, at least in the Western world. I might not be aware of what's happening in India or in other countries. But to the best of my knowledge, Shaare Tzedek delivers more babies than any other medical facility, medical center in the Western world, including Israel. So let us imagine a hospital in which 1,000 babies are delivered every day. Would we say, okay, so every day one baby will die, but 999 others will live? So that wouldn't be defined as pikuach nefesh. Would that be reasonable? Would that be acceptable? Would it be acceptable to say, we're going to lose a baby every day, we're going to lose a baby every Shabbos, not every day, but many others will live? No, that is unacceptable. We cannot lose babies regardless of what the numbers are. And that is the same regarding vaccinations. So I don't think it's relevant how many people, how many kids will be affected and how many will ultimately die. No, kids are dying. And in Israel, we know of 2 children, of the demise of 2 children as a result of measles, just in the last few months. And probably there are others, because according to the Masad B'riyut, about 50% of cases are reported, and many others go unreported. And it'll take years till we know how many other children were affected mentally, physically, for not being vaccinated. And therefore, in my opinion, it is a chiyuv gomer, not something to be recommended, not a midas chasidus. So let me make another argument. I said before that if one baby isn't vaccinated, or 2 or 3, no, we're not putting the greater community into danger. V'af al pi ken, I think that is a halachic prohibition. You need to vaccinate children even if you are an exception. And you have no right to save your children from inconvenience only because all the others do go into that inconvenience. You have no right, no moral right, to save your children from vaccination and inconvenience. And your privilege to do so is based on the fact that all the others do vaccinate. And this basic idea is based on a Bavli and a Yerushalmi. So there's an interesting comment we find in Bavli, Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Tes Omid Beis, and Yerushalmi, Bava Mitzia, Daf Tes Vav Omud Aleph. The Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud dealing with Anshe Sdoim, and the Yerushalmi Talmud dealing with Dora Mabul. Both are not role models that we want to emulate. So what was so evil about Anshe Sdoim and Dora Mabul? So a merchant came to town with a wagon full of nuts or dates. 1,000 people converged, and each of them took 1 date, 1 apple. And each of them argued, I just took 1 date. 1 date is nothing. If you have a wagon full of dates, some of them fall off this side, some of them fall off the outside. I only took 1. But 1,000 people came together, and that person's parnasa was destroyed, and he was devastated. So that is what defined Anshe Sdoim, or the evil of Dor HaMabul. What do we learn from this? That an individual is not entitled to engage in any activity, that if the many would follow in his step and the many would do the same, it would be wrong, it would destroy people. So the individual is not allowed to do that. So if many would follow your example and they will refrain from vaccinating children, yes, then epidemics will break out. So you do not have that privilege, and you need to do the same as all the others. We can prove this point from a simpler halacha, which is in Choshen Mishpat Kuf Samach Gimel, based on the Gemara Bava Basra Daf Ches, Shemiras Hu'ir. So each and every member of the city, of the community, needs to volunteer to patrol the city and to guard its walls and moats, or pay the fee for security. So if one will sneak away and he will not volunteer, probably there will be others. But this is an obligation on each and every one of the community. This is a service you owe to your neighbors, to your brothers, to the other members of your community, and it goes the same with vaccination. But in our case, we're beyond that point and beyond that argument. The two Svaras I just quoted and just explained deal with a situation in which I will be an exception and all the others will vaccinate. And even in those cases, I argue you are not entitled to do so. You can't take advantage of the fact that other parents do put their children into inconvenience and you stay away and you refrain. But what reality proves is it's not one, it's not two. It's a segment of our society which is far too large, and it puts all the others at risk. It puts all the others at risk. Because babies are not vaccinated until they're a year old, and all those little infants are in danger because of those people that don't vaccinate their children. And therefore, in my opinion, it's not the right thing to do. It is a halachic obligation we cannot escape. And every parent is mechuyev to vaccinate his children. So when my opinion became public some time ago in Israel, and I know that what I wrote was translated into English and distributed very broadly, I got some questions. Notably, one parent called me that he vaccinated his first two children, and a very short while after vaccination, they developed some eye disease, some eye condition which the doctors couldn't explain. So baby number 3, he did not vaccinate. Is he wrong? Should he have vaccinated his other 2 children? And I said, probably not. Probably in your case, I would recommend doing some further medical research, because we do not understand any connection between vaccination and eye conditions. There probably would be other reasons and other explanations why these children developed that specific condition. But if the doctors, if the mumchim can't come up with any reason explanation, I would say in your specific case, don't vaccinate. So in Yevamah Samach Dalad we find the Machloikis Rebbe and Rashbag, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Trei Simna Hava Chazoka, Tlat Simna Hava Chazoka. Do we need a recurrence of 2 times or 3 times to establish a Chazoka? And the Gemara differentiates between denominous monetary issues and life issues. So how do we define a medical condition that might not be life-threatening, but it's beyond money? So in a freak case like that one, and only if medicine can't explain this phenomenon, I would say a responsible parent would not vaccinate his 3rd child. But that is extremely, extremely rare and remote. There is no way a parent could get away with not vaccinating his children, putting his own children in danger, and putting many other infants in danger, and endangering the life of the broader community. As I said, we cannot know where and when the tipping point is, and therefore, in my opinion, it's a chiyuv gomer to vaccinate children. And I am extremely dismayed that some leaders of our communities feel differently. So in 1999, once again an English doctor, Jenner discovered vaccinations more than 200 years ago. He was an Englishman. And in 1999, Dr. Andrew Wakefield publicized a paper in which he linked the triple vaccination to autism. And took a few years till it was uncovered that paper was a fraud and he lost his license. And some people still believe in that nonsense. And I know I'm using harsh language when I say it's nonsense, because to the best of my knowledge, there is no serious scientific data to link vaccinations to autism. And therefore, this is totally ridiculous. And to my dismay, in the film community, many believe in those ridiculous ideas which are not based on science at all. And some leaders of our communities recommend abstaining from vaccination, and I think that is a great mistake.